Good morning, good afternoon, evening. We are joined by Tyler Arnone of Triad Security today, all the way from Arizona. And how are you doing today, Tyler?
Good. Yourself? Thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. I'm doing well, thank you. For our first time listeners, our viewers, the way this usually goes is that we start with guest intros, and after that, the guest would share about their company background and industry trends that they're seeing. And then Tyler would talk about what it is that Triad Security does and any challenges they're facing at the moment, what's going well, what's taking a while. So just really fluid conversation to get to know Triad Security better. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Tyler. And yeah, Tyler, please go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you guys do over at Triad.
Yeah, so I'm the founder and CEO of Triad Secure. We are a software as a service company servicing the cybersecurity industry. I spent about a decade in cybersecurity working for managed service providers as an analyst. And as I went through my career there and as I got to more senior positions, the disparity of support and tooling for that industry I found to be just lacking in so many ways you wouldn't expect for an industry that is so massive and supposed to be so mature. But then most of your service providers are using like ServiceNow to track their alerts for multiple customers. And there's just so many gaps in the tooling and like the infrastructure to support these businesses that one day I decided to quit my day job as a analyst and started building.
That's awesome. All great ideas are born from moments like that, right? Where there's a light bulb that goes off and you're thinking, well, I think I can do this better. And here's how. I may not have all the answers, but let's get started. So very happy to hear that. So as the founder and CEO, tell us a little bit about your role and how it fits into the big picture at Triad Secure.
Sure. So I am a technical founder. So most of my time, at least in this phase, goes to product. I know that there's a lot of companies out there that are okay with, like focus on trying to get the traction going and we'll improve the product as we go and we'll hire more engineers and improve. I've really wanted to take a slower approach and just focus on like what problems I can actually fix now. What are the pain points that I know of? And, talk to some close design partners and really try and come out of the door with a polished product before we start trying to worry about scaling and getting the market piece done.
Absolutely.
Hope at some point I will be less product and start doing more of the front end, business management, sales, and whatnot. But for now, I'm a bit of a perfectionist myself.
No, I totally understand. So looks like the MVP is currently underway. Is that kind of where you guys are at in your product, in your evolution?
So we did release the MVP to a initial design partner, and they did get some good use out of it. But since we were running into some problems, we knew we could fix them now, or we could do a version two. Tie in everything that was great about what we accomplished in our MVP and improve it in the direction we already know we're going to need to be at. We just wrapped that up this week and we're putting the final touches on today and tomorrow. And then next week, that's going to be replacing our MVP as a full, like version two beta release.
Awesome. No, that's great to hear. So now that you said you're a technical founder, I've got something more that I need to know. What does a typical day for you look like?
So most mornings I'll start with just syncing up with my CTO. My co-founder, Jake, has been just an awesome engineer. And me and him have been able to really put our heads together and solve some complex problems that haven't been solved. So we'll usually sync up there in the morning. And generally, I'm nose to the grindstone in the code until, I don't know, roughly 8 a.m. till about 2 a.m. every single day. But I mean, it's the startup grind.
Right. Absolutely.
That part of the story is not unique in any way, shape, or form. But the really exciting part about this phase is that we get to break stuff and see what fits. I mean, on any given month, I may ship a million lines of code just to see what works and what doesn't work. A lot of that is obviously only possible through AI accelerated tooling. But because AI is now reducing the bottleneck being my keyboard. I can treat code more like a compiler. You can try compiling and see what happens, and if it doesn't stick, then throw it out and try again. That's not something that used to be really like feasible or practical doing like standard development. So it's a lot of experimenting. A lot of it last year was mainly experimenting. Now it's just all refining, fine tuning, and knowing exactly what we're building this time. It's been really exciting seeing everything come together.
For sure. Yeah, that's a lot of lines of code that you guys are shipping on a monthly basis. So I'm sure there's you put it through the ringer and tune it and fine tune it and measure twice, cut once kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's there's obviously a lot of considerations you have to take into account when you're trying to use like AI code generation. I mean, we can get into that later if you want, but it's I that's a whole nother conversation, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about, if you guys have a niche that you guys usually target. So whether that's a yes or no, and then also a little bit about your SOC OS concept.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, there's a lot of different tools out there that are all trying to do very very similar things. So I mean, you've at the very forefront you had SOAR, which security orchestration and response. It's basically a workflow system. Those are considered a dying breed nowadays, and for good reason. They don't do everything that we all expected them to be capable of doing, and they don't create that like single hub of operation. It's a great tool, but then XDR was the next thing, which extended detection and response. That was supposed to come in and do what SOAR didn't, but then it didn't do what SOAR did either. And it's one of the things that makes this so challenging is that it's not a problem in the industry we're trying to solve that can be solved with a small solution. There's so much scatter in the cybersecurity industry, and especially for managed service providers, which I mean, that's the world I come from, and that's the world my co-founder comes from. The main thing we realized was it's not a lack of technical knowledge that creates bad investigations or bad quality of work inside your MSPs. What it is trying to be a master in 25 different tools
Right.
when you know the basics and the things that you need to know to get your certifications or your CYSA plus. Well, that's all relatively easy stuff. Anybody could study for that for 2 months and probably go and pass one of those tests. It doesn't mean that you can be a cybersecurity analyst because I mean that's only like the tip of the iceberg and the skills that you actually need. So I started this actually, believe it or not, I started it as an OSINT tool just to run like IPs and hashes because the tool that my company wanted us to use wasn't very practical. It didn't do exactly what we needed it to do for the reason we needed it. And that was kind of the mentality that started making things click to me is like, okay, well, if I actually build this knowing what I need to do and having it like purposeful and understanding like the end goal and the end state of what an analyst actually needs on a day-to-day basis, how many problems can I solve? And things just kind of snowballed and spiraled, and I ended up with the MVP that we just started rebuilt. And the main reason we needed to rebuild it was because I didn't exactly know what I was building towards at the very beginning. But with version 2, having the full story in place at the very beginning and being able to plan that more effectively, we've been able to deliver a product that like I never even thought would be possible. And it's been very exciting. So as far as the concept of like the security operating system,
Mhm.
I know that was something I mentioned to you before. And the reason we call it that is because we're really 5 or 6 different products combined into one dashboard. So we have workflow capability for your SOAR, and we have enrichment from multiple sources like you'd have from an XDR. We have cloud posture management like you would have in a CNAP. We have API powered search capabilities. So you never have to actually leave the tools or leave our dashboard to go and perform your investigations. And all of those things come together to actually create an ecosystem where like these security companies can start running operations more efficiently than anything else has provided possible.
No, that's great. So You mentioned something about version 2. Talk to us about, where the platform is so far, and then what's your roadmap for the rest of 2026, in terms of versioning or, um, product releases to the open market, et cetera?
So next week we're going to be starting version 2 and with our first design partners, and we'll make sure everything settles and doesn't explode immediately, because anybody who's been around new software knows, regardless of how good your development cycle was, once you deploy it, who knows what happens. But we're pretty confident that things are going to go well there. And as soon as we've got our initial validation, we're going to start hammering the market hard and trying to find people to fill out our beta. And if we can start generating some traction and prove like, hey, this is actually a legitimately viable product and not vaporware, then we can start looking at, getting a seed round down and really start scaling operations.
No, for sure. In terms of the beta, right? Is the beta going to be some sort of by invitation type of scenario, or are you looking to potentially ask, uh, put your ears to the market, sort of to see if there's people out there that would be willing to participate? What's the thought on that?
Yeah, so we're currently looking for three more spots in the early design partner phase. These ones can't necessarily be open because it's going to have to be one of those shared understanding type situations where, hey, we need your help to make sure we're delivering a fantastic product. As a benefit, you give us your feedback, you help us find the bugs, find the errors, and in exchange, we'll give you Triad Secure at cost. And that's our big incentive there, because we really want to have a good relationship and a solid understanding there. But we do plan on using a cohort type tier system, so that would just be for initial like design partner phase, and then we'd have a second cohort that would be a lot more open, and then a third cohort where everything would be like fully public open. Hopefully start seeing a whole lot of traction there.
For sure. At this point, are you guys totally bootstrapped, or what is the operating model at this time?
Yeah, so we are currently bootstrapped by a private investor. We were bootstrapped by Rick Smith, the CEO of Axon, which is a major local company here, actually in Arizona. They make all the police body cameras and stun guns. They definitely value security, and it was pretty exciting getting into know Rick Smith on that level.
That's awesome. In terms of the industry as a whole, what major shifts are you seeing right now, and how does what you guys are developing fit some of those gaps?
So there's a couple of different trends that are happening simultaneously in the industry. So one is enterprises want AI integration at every single level. It's a hard push, and there's valid reasoning behind it, despite what, a lot of people's personal feelings are on AI. It is a very powerful tool if used correctly. Then the other trend is there's a current model that it just keeps ballooning in the SOC ecosystem. And what that is, just everybody trying to throw a new tool at a problem. Like mathematically, it just doesn't make sense, because at a certain point, you get to a level of just scattered data everywhere that is completely unmanageable. And person working in a security operations center can tell you, like, we have strict service length agreements that we have to adhere to. And you may only have 15 minutes to determine if something is malicious or not. And I mean, can you realistically check and log in and navigate and do search queries in 6 different tools every single alert? Realistically, and if you keep making the haystack bigger, we're never going to find the needle.
Absolutely. I love how you put that. How has this trend impacted your strategy or your business as a whole? I know early stages, but talk us through some of that impact on your growth strategy.
So the big thing for me was that there's been a lot of companies out there that use this term that has now become like an absolute faux pas in the industry, called single pane of glass. Every single company I've ever seen advertise themselves as a single pane of glass has a big asterisk next to it. And, you scroll down and you look and it's like, only if you have these 5 or 6 tools. Well, that doesn't work, because that means that your enterprise company who doesn't have, or like your mid-sized business that doesn't have like a set stack in place that's been engineered to death and integral, like, sure, they can go get that. But what about your companies that have Splunk ingrained into like every piece of equipment, or they're doing like SCADA, and it's not easy to just rip out a software or, your log aggregators and replace that stuff. So what I really, really wanted to focus on was creating a system up front that allowed us to create a moat around like our ability to provide connections to different tools. So we led with a brand new approach to creating a plugin system that allows the entire code base to be vendor agnostic and allows the user to never actually see a difference in their general operations, regardless of the tools they're operating with. So if you need to search your logs in Splunk or in Elasticsearch, you need index pattern selection for that. But what about when you go search something like your EDR, your Sentinel-1, your CrowdStrike? Well, in our system, you're still going to select an index pattern and make it the exact same process for every single system. And we try to take that as far as we can, because the less amount of like cognitive load in thinking about like tool specifics an analyst has to do, the more they can focus on just figuring out the actual problems and the activity going on. I mean, our big push is, we want to make syntax query languages obsolete. And this is one of those great things where AI is an amazing tool, because if you dial it in, you can make an AI translate NLP queries, so natural language processing. And imagine being able to search 6 different tools at one time with one query, and you do it the exact same way as you would search for something in Google.
Yeah, that definitely makes it a lot more quicker to turn around and standardize some of those searches.
Yeah, and it translates into less overall time needed per investigation. It translates into less training time required per analyst, because they don't need to be masters in every single syntax language. And I mean, it makes it easier and more efficient to actually find the data you're looking for.
Yeah, for sure. So let's segue into data a little bit. So as far as operationally and talking about reporting, right? What metrics are you most focused on improving?
So this is an interesting area, because it's really going to take the metric visibility to a new level. And a lot of SOCs don't have a lot of metric capability that you would expect. You would expect that most professional SOCs have a automated way of being able to track the quality of work from every single analyst. They don't. There's no way to do that. What the only way would be to have somebody on staff who sits there and just reads analysis all day, and they'll spot check and check for any misses or false positives that should have been true positives. That's another place where AI is an awesome helper, because you can create your own grading rubrics and have an AI go through and spot check every single thing on the fly, even before it gets closed, or even stop a bad escalation while it's being sent out to a customer and immediately notify the manager. Like, those things don't exist right now, but they're all solvable problems. But the reason they don't exist is because the tooling we're using just isn't designed for our specific use case in our industry. So, I mean, improving quality and standardizing operations
Uh-huh.
is a huge thing that's going to unlock a lot of metrics that didn't even exist. And then on top of that is improving the time to triage for your entire team. Having all of the data there right when you go into the alert, not having to search for it. I mean, we're talking 45 minutes of an hour of like forensic investigation. We already know from experience what you need to find on a general basis. So we can provide that up front for 90% of cases. For 10% of your edge cases, you still have all of the capabilities directly in one page to, fill in the gap. I mean, that's also why AI is not ready to replace analysts. AI might be able to account for 90% of the noise, but that 10% is what matters. AI is nowhere near ready to replace that 10%.
No, for sure. You talked a little bit about where this would fit in. So what is your ideal customer profile, given where you guys are at in the growth stage?
So, any managed service provider is going to significantly benefit from our tools. Any like enterprise corporation or corporation that has like multiple tenant requirements. So if you've got like multiple networks and you want them tenant segmented, or say you even have 5 or 6 different locations and you do manufacturing, you want to be able to tenant that stuff and give yourself the opportunity to decentralize. Because with our tenant structure, you could take something like even like a large hotel chain that, they have thousands of locations, and you could centralize that into one SOC. I mean, it costs on average, what, $2.5 million per year to operate a like bare bones SOC operations for most companies. I mean, we could trim that down significantly and centralize to like one location with having proper tenant structures. And that's one of our big areas that sets us apart from a lot of our competitors. Even like the really big names in like cloud native platforms like Wiz, none of them are multi-tenanted to the same level that we are. And that in itself is a massive improvement in usability and what we can provide as capabilities.
Got it. In terms of when we, not to make a comparison, but in the consumer world, licenses are based on seats, right? In your world, would they be based on every a tenant count? If you've got some of these customers that are in this ICP, they've got multi-locations. Would
Yeah,
that be
so it's both by tenant and by seats. Seats are obviously flexible and dynamic. Tenants are going to be based on a subscription plan,
got it?
because I mean that's where most of our operating cost is going to come from as well. Is because the more tenants you have, the more edge traffic. It's all proportional. But I mean, even at the basic level, if you don't need multi-tenant capability, we can still take care of that for you. You're still going to be given an intelligence layer that sits above your current tools and still empowers everything that is already there.
Got it.
That makes sense.
Oh yeah, for sure. That's very valuable. I know you said your background, you came from the MSP world, right? And your ICP is also MSPs. On that note, is there any plan to go beyond the platform and actually think about providing the services, since you guys know your
Mhm.
platform best? Where are you guys at in that thought process?
So it is something being considered at the moment. For now, I think the best course of action is to be singularly focused and make sure that we have a solid product in place. Later down the road, it would be a very interesting proposition to like consider some sort of roll ups or even have our own provider like service. At first, I was a little skeptical about this because coming from that industry, I know for a fact that most of those companies are running very lean operations. They have to. And as the product has been developing, we've started to realize like a lot of those reasons that MSPs are running such lean operations is just because of operational inefficiency. So
Correct.
if we're solving that problem and we have a framework to build around, then I mean we could potentially stand to be in a very very good position to consider that.
That's exactly why I brought it up, because I've got an MSP background as well. And while organizations are trying to trim that operational team and provide more as a service type of offerings, there's a value add in something like this where you got an MSP that is interested. They love the product, but they might have to move some headcount around to be able to firstly take the training, digest the knowledge, and then start providing the service, as opposed to, hey, Tyler, you guys have a couple of guys that can give us 20 hours a month, or what have you,
Mhm.
whether it's a flexi service model or it's a monthly fixed or monthly MRR based model, whatever it is. But yeah,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I
But
was coming from.
yeah, and a lot of that points to the unspoken problem there is a lot of people say that MSPs make bad customers. They're hard to sell to. The sales cycles are slow, and you know exactly what I'm talking about coming from that
Yep.
industry.
Yep.
But is it that they're notoriously hard to sell to for no reason, or have they been underserved?
Or both. Yeah.
Or both. It could be
Yeah.
both. I'm hoping it's not both. That would make my life a little slightly more difficult. But I do think that like if the product actually makes sense, it will sell faster. And there's also like another aspect that I think has been like under considered is there. I'm not the only one trying to make a product to streamline operations for MSPs. There's several different players out there that are all trying to do the same thing, and all of us are taking a slightly different approach. But the one thing I don't think is really talked about enough is that improving operational efficiency for MSPs does not always mean the same thing as it means for enterprise. When enterprise finds ways to like smooth operations and improve efficiency, that usually means that they're going to shrink teams down and do more with less people. For
Absolutely.
MSPs, like the barrier of how much money you can take in every year is
Mhm.
dependent on how many alerts you can actually manage to triage with the team you have in place. So for managed service providers, it doesn't always mean scale down operations. It could mean take on more valuable contracts.
Absolutely. Excuse me. And it's also about showing what value they can provide, right? And this can be one more value add. And also on the flip side, right? Have you guys thought about doing any type of white labeling that can help MSPs kind of say, "Hey, we've got this solution," and essentially they're your customers, but they're using this in their SOC operations and plugging it into every customer that wants the offer.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that because that actually leads me into like the second biggest pain point that's underserved for MSPs is customer churn rate. I have been in enough customer meetings to know that if everything is going well, your customers don't think you're doing anything. And that is rough because you end up being your own worst enemy by just running good operations for your
Yep.
customers.
Yep.
There's a couple of different ways we want to solve this problem. The first one is obviously having a companion customer portal application that is fully rebrandable, fully white labeled, and manageable by the Triad Secure subscribers. So you control access, you control what that looks like for all of them. To an extent, I don't want to make it like you have to build your own website in there or anything. But that's going to give your customers a way to immediately be able to answer any questions they may have. It'll have all of the statistics they could possibly want if they're just curious. So that means you don't have to take time out of your day to, if a customer asks you how many alerts they had this month, they can go on the portal and they can see their dashboard there. You can manage all of your surveys. You can do all of your customer meetings through there. And you can also work or collaborate on escalations to your customers through the portal. So that'll be a great resource to have.
Absolutely.
The second part of why customers lose confidence or why they have high churn rates is when they lose confidence because an analyst was busy and they didn't write up the perfect escalation or, the escalations aren't providing enough value to those customers. So this is where we kind of blur the line between like benefit for everybody and when we really start calling ourselves the intelligence layer of your security operations. On my journey to figure out how to make alerts smarter, I ended up building a cloud native platform that's able to algorithmically determine attack path forecasts and identity and management analysis for like permissions based avenues of attack based on your single alerts. So I ended up coming to the line of like, does the alert itself need more data or does the alert need to tell a story? Because initially I was just trying to pull in all the data I could, but then you're just swimming in data, right? So, our goal is that every single menial alert you get is now a live and interactive part of a story on a graph. And that graph is going to be able to hypothesize attack paths based on activity. And it's going to be able to give you an outcomes based approach. And then because of that, we can immediately give you the best recommendations to solve these problems or to remediate that threat with as few steps as possible. And hopefully without having to put in a budget request. Because I mean, there's a lot of times you'll submit a true positive ticket and they need a budget to fix that, but that has to be approved the CISO and the CISO has to ask the CEO. But I mean, if you've got a framework that's going to give you the best possible approach to at least mitigate this temporarily until like a permanent fix is put into place, like imagine how much more secure we can make our environments.
No, very true. You've talked everything you've mentioned is more on the blue team side, right? But
Mhm.
is there anything that you guys are doing in terms of the red team side where you can actually expose some of these vulnerabilities beyond the recommended ones that are pulled from your platform?
Sure. So this is something we've kind of gone back and forth on. I do have a full platform red team capable software that is probably never going to see the light of day, if I'm being honest. And that's because I can give you a project management app, but the moment I give you the tools for red team is the moment I create a massive attack surface that is API powered to all of like the customers in those tenants.
Okay.
So as much as I would love to, the most I think we would be able to like risk tolerate at this point would be activity tracking. We do have the ability to run vulnerability scans directly from the app, and you do have
Uh,
your purple team capabilities.
yes.
But as far as like Metasploit or running like Snort or anything like that, for the time being, we'll probably want to stay away from.
Sure. So in terms, let's talk a little bit about the business aspect of this, right? In terms of, org size, revenue, customer base, where do you see yourself in 6 to 12 months from now?
6 to 12 months from now, I think that we're going to start generating some pretty significant traction. I don't want to oversell and underdeliver by any means, but I do think that within the next 12 months, we should be looking at, like a very solid Series A, and maybe even looking at raising up to 15 to 18 million at that point, and then that's really going to be where we start considering provider services as well.
Gotcha. No, this is great intel. And lastly, as we get to the final kind of section, we've got a fun one for you. If you had a magic wand to fix one thing in your business that's holding you back or slowing you down, what would that be?
I could always use more money. Honestly, I don't have very many complaints. I mean, progress is never going to go as fast as you want it to, but if your expectations are relatively tempered, things go pretty well. I have a great team. I'm very blessed to have the people I have in place, and I personally feel like it's all just inevitable.
Yeah, it's just a matter of time, huh?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been fantastic getting to know all you've said about your company and what you guys are building. Kind of excited to see where the next 6 months gets you guys, and definitely gonna keep an eye on that. Is there anything you would like to share with our audience? Any best practices? Anything that they should be mindful of?
There's a lot of things. I kind of had like a Three Stooges moment. Everything tried to go through the door at once. AI is a fantastic tool, but it is not a standalone solution. I think especially in the cybersecurity industry, and especially with Clawbot that just happened even this week, I think it's a good reality check to understand that use AI, but use it intelligently and use it safely.
Perfect. No, thank you for the sage advice. AI is definitely taking over a lot of our day-to-day efficiency tasks, and most of our audience is tuned into this podcast to learn more about AI and security.